Good afternoon and welcome to the February 8th meeting of the Senate Privileges and Elections Committee. We have a number of bills to get through today. Some of them are identical or similar to bills that we've heard before. For bills that we've heard before, we're not going to take public testimony, but let's start by taking the roll.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Delegate Campbell agreed that we could take his bill without him being here. It's a bill that HB 34 is identical to a bill from Senator Chase dealing with absentee voting, return of absentee ballot drop-off locations. We had previously PBI'd the Senate version on a 9-6 vote. Is there a motion to deal with that bill?
Mr. Chair, this is the bill that repeals the drop-off boxes.
That's correct.
And I would move to PBI the bill.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of PBIing HB 34 will indicate by voting aye on the electronic voting board.
Ayes 8, no 6.
Okay, and I see we have a patron. Do you want to come forward?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Philip Scott here to speak to House Bill 39.
Okay, that's on page 4 of your agenda. This deals with the shortening the period of absentee voting.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 39 reduces early voting from 45 days to 14 days of early voting. In my county, my home county, Spotsylvania County, we've had 135 days of early voting in the past year. When we expanded early voting to 45 days, that impacts general election, primary, and even special election. And so very recently we had a special election to elect a replacement supervisor after Supervisor Barry Jett passed away. And so for 45 days we had to have that station manned, that voting place, having staff on hand to make sure that people could get checked in and cast their ballot for 45 days leading up to it, and then you had a primary and a general election. And the complaint from my local registrar's office and local election officers is that it's just too long. It's too much time to try and get staff to be able to do that because it's not a regular employment or to get volunteers to be able to help out. And so their request was to consider shortening it to 2 weeks, which if you take the majority of the states across our great nation, the average is 2 weeks of early voting. Some have longer, some have less. And so that was where we got that number from. And so we're just trying to make sure that we are giving an opportunity for folks to still have access to voting early. Another complaint that we received was that the hours of 8:30 to 4:30 limited the access to the ballot. And so what this bill does is it actually expands the hours of voting from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to allow folks to be able to go and vote before they go to work or after they go to work, depending on what their schedule may be. So while it reduces the amount of days for early voting, it actually expands the hours at the same time. So we think that was a good compromise.
So this would reduce the hours not just in the circumstance of your special election in your county, but in the presidential election, it would lessen the number of days that people could vote?
This would be all elections, correct.
Okay. Are there questions from members of the committee? Is there members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this bill?
Clarabelle Wheeler, County of Albemarle, former State Board of Elections and Electoral Board officer. I've spoken with several registrars, and the account that he gives from his county is pervasive across Virginia. The burden of cost is huge across Virginia. There is no actual data that's been presented to y'all, and you do need the data, but we don't have it, for what it's cost every locality for 45 days. That includes registrars' regular staff time because they have to be available to open and close and provide services. People who are the deputy registrars or assistants who work every day, the equipment that needs to be bought. And if you look at a chart, and I'm sorry I don't have a big bulletin board for you, but if you look at the factual numbers of people who voted in Virginia in the 45 days, you'll see a trickling of people beginning 45 days out. And of course, there may be more people that vote on the first day because they want to be first, and that's good. But the trickle comes along, and then 2 weeks before the election, the bar goes whoosh. I mean, it's an impressive graph. And for 2 weeks, that's when the vast majority of Virginians vote. And I think it would be advisable to consider that when you consider this bill, because if you could reduce the cost to a 2-week increment, and this bill gives additional hours, so it's almost like a regular election day, and compress that, you'll get just as many people voting, and the cost will be
Ms. Wheeler,
reduced.
might I ask you?
Yes, sir.
Do you see a difference between the special election the delegate is referring to in one county and a presidential election where there are hundreds of thousands of people who cast ballots over the early period?
The graph that I just discussed is from the gubernatorial election, November 2021.
So do you have a graph for us?
Sorry.
Okay.
I am negligent, and I'm sorry, but I will get it.
But I think we get your
it.
point. But I would just ask the delegate, there's nothing requiring that there be satellite sites for special elections for county supervisor, is there?
No, for our supervisor race, we just had the registrar's office, but we had to have a voting machine or two in there, making sure that there was additional staff on hand to be able to help with people coming in, because as the lady said, when the registrar's office is open, they have their regular duties that they're fulfilling for the county as a whole. And so this is not just dealing with satellite locations, which during a regular election, there's going to be multiple locations that some counties have rented and reserved and are staffing multiple locations because of the size of the counties. So this is what this is doing. If the committee were to want an amendment to maybe create an extension for a presidential election, I'd be open to hearing that.
Yeah, I think we're going to just do with the bill before us unless members have other comments. Is there further discussion or a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. There are people who want to speak in support. We're going to limit it to 2 minutes total, so I'd ask those who are speaking online to be respectful of the other's time and be brief in your remarks. But we'll start with Vic Nichols.
Thank you. Problem that we had, the libraries where they had the expanded voting were basically unusable for those 45 days instead of just 2 weeks. The second thing with the hours, this bill will take care of, because the constant complaints that things were either open 9 to 5, 10 to 4 or something, and did not get the workers, this will take care of that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie Cornelise.
Thank you. Yes, I urge everyone to vote against House Bill 39 and for increased access to voting and elections for all our voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea Bayer, please go ahead.
Yes, I've been an election officer and a chief and an assistant chief, and I also have been a poll greeter and poll watcher. I live in Fairfax County. I've lived here all my life. I just believe that we have reduced voting to by this early voting to a voting season. It's a month and a half that takes away our facilities. We had 3 45-day sites here in monster facilities. We have 740,000 plus voters, and people in Fairfax County can go clear across the county 30, 40 miles and vote in a facility where no one would know them. And I believe we read out names as election officers so that anybody could challenge that voter. But if a voter drives clear across the county, sometimes 50 miles, then no one's going to know that voter.
I'm going to ask you to conclude and confine your comments to this bill.
To this bill, I support severely reduced early voting times.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Shuping Lei.
I support this bill because everybody that is too long too early to vote. I support this bill. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you. And next, we have a person who's representing the Virginia Beach Tea Party, I think.
Yes, my name is Diana Howard, and I am the chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party. And in Virginia Beach, we have 6 satellite offices for early voting, and it's a huge cost to man all of these satellite offices. So, and everybody knows when election is. 45 days is way too long. I mean, if you know that you are going to have elections, you have absentee voting, ballot voting, and you can get there on election day or 2 weeks before, but 45 days is a huge burden and cost.
Okay, thank you for speaking. Now we have those who oppose the bill. Are there any in the room who oppose the bill? Okay, we'll go to online and hear from Douglas Broom.
Yes, hello. I oppose this bill. I support increased access to voting. I don't see any reason to limit access. And as a citizen, I'd be willing to pay more taxes to increase staff and increase everybody's opportunity to vote. And I don't think we should second guess what people's circumstances are. We just don't. We could get more people voting by having the early voting period be longer.
Thank you. Melody Clark.
Yeah, if you would allow my screen share, I have the graph of when the people vote during the voting period. You wanted a graph on that? There's a VPAP graph that shows that.
Thank you. Okay, did you want to comment further, or okay? Next, we've got Christian Canito.
Hi there. I think that limiting people's access to the polls is very obviously a tactic. And I think it's really cute for people to say that there is plenty of time, because obviously those people haven't worked as volunteers, and see people running in at the last minute. I do agree with keeping the hours of operation open until 7 p.m. And increasing access in other ways. So that is what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, and our final speaker, I don't know if you're opposed or in favor, but Pamela Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Pamela Berg, and I am testifying today on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Virginia. We oppose HB 39. Early voting in person is highly popular with voters. The 45-day early voting period is important to people who work long hours, work multiple jobs, commute long distances, care for children, care for the elderly, for their elderly family members, or other reasons. There is no discernible purpose of depriving the voters of this convenience and making it harder to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we now have HB 39 before us. Is there a motion or further discussion? Yes, Senator Peake.
I just wanted to speak on the bill briefly. And the lady who just spoke against the bill kind of summed it up and actually confirmed the need for the bill. She said, and everybody runs, 45 days isn't enough, everybody runs in at the last minute. And that's exactly what happens. Nobody runs in at the first minute. They run in at the end as you get close to the election, after they've seen the television ads and they get tired of it. 2 weeks is plenty for anyone to vote, and you can still request an absentee ballot by mail. I know this bill is going to pass, so I move to pass the bill.
Is there a second to that motion?
Got a substitute motion, Mr. Chair.
Substitute motion?
Motion to PBI the bill.
Okay. So all in favor of PBI will vote yes on the electronic voting board.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Delegate. Okay, I don't know who was here next, do we have a sign-up? We have the sign-up sheet here.
No, we took care of another bill.
Okay, Delegate Batten.
That's good grief.
Hey, you can't have a heart.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have before you two bills. The first bill is House Bill 528. House Bill 528 has three components. It requires organizations that are sending unsolicited absentee ballot applications to provide information on how to complete and submit the application to the appropriate registrar, and to also disclose that they are not a government entity sending the absentee ballot application. Secondly, it requires these organizations to send the forms only to registered voters who have not already requested an application. And lastly, it prohibits the organizations from pre-filling the forms with the voters' information. And I am happy to answer any questions from the committee members.
Mr. Chairman.
Before I get to Senator Reeves, I just want to ask, you're providing a Class 4 misdemeanor penalty. What is that equivalent to, Delegate?
I would have to defer to counsel on that.
Counsel? Class 4 misdemeanor for...
$5 fine, isn't it? Something like that.
For...
$100 fine.
Yeah.
Class 4? Maybe we'll...
Is that a $250 fine, I think? Yes, that's right. $250 fine. Yes.
Okay, I'm told it's a $250 fine, and council's verifying that. Why don't we go to Senator Reeves?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Batten, I've gotten lots of different pieces of mail from constituents. Some of them look like absentee ballots, but are just not quite absentee ballots, to just get people to send in an absentee ballot. But you're actually talking about state-printed absentee ballots third parties are sending to people?
Absentee ballot application forms.
Right. Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure. So this doesn't prevent the third parties from sending the stuff that looks like absentee ballots or a, they look like a regular ballot, and they fill it all in?
Mr. Chairman, are you referring to a sample ballot?
Sample ballots, yeah.
No, this just refers to absentee ballot application forms.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, are there other questions from members of the panel?
Mr. Chair, where did this bill come from?
This bill was brought to me by the registrars for a variety of reasons. First of all, they were dealing with a lot of voters who were confused because there were outside organizations that were sending absentee ballot applications, encouraging people to request an absentee ballot. And voters were actually thinking that they were ballots and wondering why they were getting multiples of them. Secondly, you are allowed to fill out multiple absentee ballot application forms. Your registrar will obviously only send you one ballot. However, it was creating a lot of extra work for registrars who were getting multiple applications from a registered voter and then having to go through and make sure that they had not already sent them an absentee ballot.
Well, Mr. Chair, this
Yes,
came
Senator
from the
Dean.
Registrars Association or a group of registrars you're familiar with?
It came from my local registrar, and then I've also been working with a group of registrars on it as well. And I'm not sure whether or not they will be in the online world to testify.
Okay. Are there other questions from the panel? I noticed that you want to have an 18-point font on the front page of the envelope. Isn't that kind of large?
Mr. Chairman, the intent is that it is large so that it's not hidden at the bottom, and then we end up in the same situation where the recipient is confused and
Yeah.
it doesn't jump out to them.
Yeah, and the last question that I have is about pre-populating the absentee ballot form. I know the Republican Party of Virginia had done this with great success in some low turnout legislative elections, so to make it easy for people, so the information would be easy to read and less room for error than a hand-filled out form. But you would prohibit someone from filling out the form on my behalf?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Surville has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the patron. So back in 2015, Speaker Howell went to the State Board of Elections and requested them to authorize electronic signatures on absentee ballots. I believe Ms. Wheeler is one of the people who voted for it behind you. She probably remembers this. And since then, people have started to send out emails to people soliciting them to apply for absentee voting electronically. So you click a link, you go on a website, and obviously with the way technology is today, the links can be intelligent and know who the email was sent to, and the link could pre-populate the form on the screen, and then the screen, already has the information. You only got to do is sign it and hit button and submit. I'm not clear how that process squares with this statute that you've written, because this seems to talk about things that would involve mail, but it doesn't say in the statute anywhere that this only involves paper applications or mail, even though you can now submit and sign electronically. Can you explain how that would square with your bill?
Mr. Chairman, I would defer, I suppose, to counsel, but I believe that that would not be an unsolicited absentee ballot application if the voter themselves actually went online and requested it and had it pre-populated.
Okay. Senator Peake, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the patron. And I take it, I'll tell you that back during the 2020 election, I had a number of people come up to me and say they received an absentee ballot in the mail, even though they had not requested it. And these were very intelligent people. One of them, I know an Ivy League undergrad, an Ivy League medical doctor, swore to me she received an actual ballot in the mail. I've been told by the person here that you cannot get a ballot in the mail if you don't request it. Is that the purpose of the 18-point type, and that if it comes from a third-party organization, that it will be written all over it that this is not a ballot, this is what you have to do to actually get the ballot?
Mr. Chairman, I can't necessarily speak to voters' confusion about the difference between an absentee ballot application and the actual ballot that you complete yourself. This is simply to clarify that this is not a government entity that is sending this out, that it is a third party. If the voter is still confused after having received that information, then we will have to continue addressing those on a one-on-one situation.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
But the 18-point font will tell them, will it say who is sending it to them? Or will it say that this is an application and not the ballot?
It says neither in the bill. But Delegate, do you want to comment on that?
I mean, my understanding is that the 18-point font simply states it's not a government agency that's sending it, and that it's a application.
Gotcha. Not the government. Thank you.
Okay. Are there others who would like to? Do we already take public comment? Okay, we'll take 2 minutes on each side. First, those who favor the bill. And please limit your remarks so that others can speak.
Clever Wheeler, Albemarle County, and Senator Sorrell exactly right. I was on that board, and I think we're somehow have a confluence of two different issues. One is, how do you actually request an absentee ballot? And you can do that online, and if you attach your Virginia driver's license number, you don't have to use your social security number, and then the Virginia driver's DMV will attach your wet signature, a term that was taught to me by an attorney, onto the application. So that's a real application that a voter submits. The question before your panel today is letting the voters know that the request for an application for an absentee ballot is not coming from the Commonwealth of Virginia or their local registrar's office or electoral boards. Many third parties send out these envelopes that look for all in the world, and Senator Reeves has seen these. It looks exactly like an application that you would get from the State Board of Elections. My mother, who had been in heaven for 10 years, got one of these applications sent to her address. It was completely filled out, pre-populated with everything, including her full social security number. And it came from a third party, and I had to get out. I mean, at the time, I was on an electoral board. I mean, I was fairly familiar with the process. I had to go get her, Sherlock Holmes magnifying glass and go over the application. And finally, in font I didn't know printed that small, it said, sent by the Center for Voter Participation. But the address on the return envelope said Virginia State Department of Elections, and the address, the only thing that was different was the zip code. So
time for the speakers for the bill, and I think there are others who are still in support. So let's have them speak briefly, those online. I'm going to ask that you state your name and if you're for the bill and if you represent an organization, starting with Vic Nichols.
Yeah, Vic Nichols, our group on Nextdoor, ton of questions. This solves that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison Robbins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allison Robbins. I'm the General Registrar in the County of Wise with the Voter Registrars Association, and we'd like to thank the patron for working with us to bring this bill forward. We urge the committee to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Diana Moorman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Diana Moorman, General Registrar for James City County and First Vice President for the Voter Registrar Association of Virginia. And like Allison said, we do thank Delegate Batten for working with us to support this bill. It will help with voter confusion, and it will help reduce the amount of times that voters get confused between an absentee ballot and an absentee ballot application. And the voter registration application is already prohibited from being pre-filled, and this would just go in line with the voter registration application. So I guarantee that each of your registrars will thank you in supporting this bill as well.
Thank you. Andrea Bayer.
Hi, I'm Andrea Bayer with the Fairfax GOP Election Officer Outreach Coordinator and Providence District Chair. I support this bill. There is mass confusion over the number of absentee ballot applications coming. If people throw them away, anybody can go and get them out of someone's trash and misuse them.
Okay, and lastly, we'll hear from the individual who identified as the Virginia Beach Tea Party.
Yes, this is Diana Howard, Chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party, and for all the reasons mentioned, we support this bill.
Okay, and now opposition speakers. Are there opposition speakers in the room? Okay, we'll hear from Christian Canito online first, and then Jean Hanowich after that.
I actually do not oppose this bill. I think it should be amended to include government officials as well, as I have received forms that have been filled out in my name from the city government of Chesapeake, Republican Party, that look very suspicious. And so I think that the bill should be amended to include government officials. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hanowich?
Hello. Yes. I also have received absentee ballot applications from candidates who are running, and I feel that that should also be included. If you're going to prohibit organizations, you should also be prohibiting the candidates, because the candidates are going to target sending out those absentee ballots to the people they think that are going to vote for them. And if this is going to be something that's going to be changed, it should also affect the candidates, not just outside organizations. Thank you.
I think the bill actually does. Okay. So we've heard from the public. Is there a motion on the bill?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Senator
I'd like to
Vogel.
make a comment and then a motion. I think it's hard to oppose this legislation. And in the long conversations I had in advance of the legislative session, this is something that lots of people brought to me. I didn't actually bring legislation, but I considered it. And for all the reasons that people have mentioned, I think voters are confused. They get mail that looks official. They don't know what's official and what's not official. And if you speak to registrars, they will tell you that pre-populated applications coming in it's a major issue. So I would urge the members of this committee to support the bill. I think it will go a long way to making things simpler and easier for voters, and that will solve a lot of issues for our registrars. So with that, I'd make a motion we pass the bill.
There's been a motion, a second. Is there any substitute motion?
Substitute motion, PBI.
Is there a second? Okay. So the motion before us now is to whether to PBI. If you're in favor of PBI, vote yes on the electronic voting board. If opposed, vote no.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Oh, sorry.
We can switch Senator Vogel's vote for her. Okay, and you have another bill.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have before you House Bill number 544. This bill simply allows a voter to opt into being required to show a valid photo ID when voting in person. Photo ID is only required if the voter has expressly requested to be asked for proof of identification when voting, and I am happy to answer any questions from the committee members.
Was there a fiscal impact to this?
Mr. Chairman, the fiscal impact was minimal. The DMV said that the programming changes would be about $41,000, and it would be absorbed by the agency and require no additional funding.
Thank you. Are there other members of the committee with questions for Delegate Batten? Yes, Senator McClellan.
Delegate Batten, is there anything that prohibits a voter from showing an ID today when they vote?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, there's nothing that prohibits a voter from showing ID right now. This bill was actually brought to me by one of my elderly constituents who had been a victim of identity theft and wanted to ensure that every time they were asked to purchase anything or or vote, that they would have to show a photo ID, and it would be required so that no one else would be able to act in their stead.
Okay. Are there those who would like to comment in favor of the bill?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Senator Peake.
Yeah, and it seems to me this is another complaint that I've heard, not just in 2020, but before that, where people, and their stories, and I do not know if they're verified, but I've had people tell me that they went to vote and someone had already voted for them. And if you say, nobody can vote for me unless they have a photo ID, this will eliminate that. So people are concerned about their votes being stolen. They can mark this, if I'm reading it correctly, and when they go to vote, the registrar or whoever's taking the information will request their photo ID so that that person can rest assured that nobody's voting for them without an ID. And Mr. Chair, if I could ask the patron, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there other members of the panel with a question? Okay. Were there those who would like to speak for this bill in the room? Come to the podium. If not, we'll take online. Oh, okay. Yes, come forward. Keep in mind we're taking 2 minutes each side total.
Only comment is I've spoken with registrars and electoral board members who saw this problem in the post-election canvasses. People came in, just as Senator Peake said, saying that someone else has voted my ballot. When I came in to vote, someone else had already voted, and I had to do a provisional ballot. This is a purely individual choice by a voter to ask the registrar to mark the poll book to request a photo so that no.
But Dr.
Yes,
Wheeler, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Senator Deeds.
Were there cases, that's cases where a crime has clearly been committed? Are those cases being prosecuted by anywhere? Body? If they're not, why not? And why don't we read about them in the newspaper?
If I could have 1 extra minute to answer the senator's question.
Please answer the question.
If someone comes in under today's law, they do not have to show an ID, and they can sign a piece of paper that says, I'm who I say I am, and I live at such address. That's it.
Well,
and then they can vote. There's no way to know who that person alleging to be Clarabelle Wheeler was. You can't take a photograph of them in the polling place.
Can I follow up on your allegation of the fraud that occurred and ask how many of those people you referred to the Commonwealth's Attorney or the Board of Elections?
There's no one to refer, Senator, because you don't have someone to prosecute.
So you did not refer anyone to the Commonwealth's Attorney or to the Board of Elections, not even to the Board of Elections to complain?
There have been, the Electoral Board is sitting doing the provisional canvass. And if a voter comes in who filled out a provisional ballot because when they came to vote, the poll book said, you've already voted. They'd already been marked as having voted. The Code of Virginia that you all voted to pass says, in that case, the person who comes in who says, I have not voted, is entitled to cast a provisional ballot and then come to the provisional ballot to defend it. And when they come in, you can't prove a negative. I mean, I can't prove that I didn't ever
If I could follow up
come.
one more time and ask, did you or did you not refer them to the Board of Elections to complain that this practice occurred?
That practice has been reported, but there's no way.
Because the Board of Elections told us that they didn't have anyone testifying to that effect or complaining to that effect.
Maybe an attorney could explain it, but there's no one to prosecute. If someone comes in and fills out a piece of paper.
You're misunderstanding the question. That's completely different. He's asking you, and we should have it, and everybody complains, and I want it. Get us the names of the people who say somebody voted in their place. That's what we need. That's what he's asking you.
I'm sorry.
Do you have a list of names of people who said they went to vote and were told somebody had voted in their place. We need a list of those names. They need to be turned over to the state
I agree with
registrar.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with both of these senators.
Well, do we have a list of those names?
We do not have a list, but we'll try to work on getting that list from the local
Yeah,
counties.
because we've heard testimony from the Board of Elections that not one Virginian had complained to that effect to their recollection.
I agree.
Okay,
Thank
so we're going to have to move on to the other speakers. And if you could be brief, because we're using the time. Mr. George Clark?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak. To me, this bill, I know that there's a little bit of passion in the room, I can tell via Zoom, but this bill is just really simple. It doesn't take away anybody's right to vote. It doesn't stop anybody from voting. It doesn't do any of that. All it does is give voters comfort. There's a lot of folks out there that are worried that their vote could be taken away. And just being able to opt in really is, it's just provides voters comfort. So I do support the bill. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Vic Nichols.
Thank you. The seniors that I know don't have to jump through hoops. They're not going to do that. They're just going to complain and expect people like me and the government to get this right for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea Bayer.
I support this legislation. We did have several people who came in and were told that they had already voted and they were given a provisional ballot. When they're given a provisional ballot, they are told that they can contest that provisional ballot at the hearing. The hearings are held during the day when people work. You talk about not having an ability to go vote. People really don't have an ability to go to the hearings, don't have the wherewithal. And if they voted early, they forget within the 45 days.
Thank you, Ms. Bayer. Virginia Beach Tea Party individual.
Diana Howard, chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party. I've worked the polls, and I had to tell people that and seen them say that somebody else has already voted in their place, and now they have to do a provisional ballot, and they've complained about it. So you have a list of people that did provisional ballots. You can go back and ask them.
Thank you, Melanie Cornelise.
Yes, thank you. I urge you senators to vote in favor of voter rights and voter access and to vote no on what is clearly yet another voter suppression bill. Thank you.
Thank you. On to Doe. You're next.
Yes, my name is Ann Doe from Centerville, Virginia, and I would like to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for testifying. Shuping Lei.
Yeah, my name is Su Ping Lai. I'm from the Loudoun County. I support this bill because the people can vote without you allowed, and it's very confusing. I support this bill.
Thank you. Christian Canito.
Hello. I think that making bills that could potentially eventually lead to limiting access, such as having to have a voter ID in the future or have a signature in the future, I think it's a slippery slope. And if you guys are going to make straw man arguments about it and not even have names to point to, I think it's completely irrelevant to put forth legislation that could potentially lead to something more nefarious. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we now have speakers in opposition, starting with Douglas Broom.
I oppose this bill. I watched approximately 1,100 or 1,200 people vote during the early voting period and on election day, and I didn't see an instance of this problem. But what I did see was a problem with people being trained, poll workers being properly trained in who can vote and who can't vote and what kinds of identification they need. And this bill would require retraining and I believe promote confusion about photo ID. So I oppose it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we now have the bill before us. HB 544. Is there a motion?
Substitute motion.
What is that motion?
Pass by indefinitely.
Motion to PBI. Is there a second to that? Okay, all in favor of PBI will vote aye. Those opposed vote no.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have a sign-up list, but Delegate Lefwich is in a committee across the hall, so with your indulgence, I'm going to take him first, and then we'll get back to the list.
I thank you, Chairman, but at full disclosure, we finished my committee meeting, so
Oh,
I'm not sure if I'm shooting myself in the foot.
Well, why don't we stick with the list then? Okay, if you don't mind bearing with us.
His would be easy.
Let's go to Delegate von Valkenburg first. He's been waiting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. House Bill 439 is about making sure that when there's a constitutional amendment, that there's an explainer for people who have absentee ballots. So, as many of you may remember, we had 2 amendments in 2020. We had a rise in absentee ballots. There was no explainer included with those, and so your staff, the Board of Election staff, our good friends at DLS, we're getting a lot of phone calls asking them to explain the amendment. When you go to a polling precinct, right to vote, those explainers are there for you, but if you were voting absentee, you didn't have it. This would just require the Department of Elections to include the link to where somebody could find that information so that they had the same information a person voting in person has. That's the bill. Be glad to take any questions if you have them.
Are there questions for Delegate von Valkenburg? I think the bill is pretty straightforward. Do you have witnesses here are there witnesses who wanted to testify in favor of the bill? This fine public information bill.
If you're in the Zoom room and wish to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, we do have speakers virtually.
Okay, let's hear from, is Pamela Berg our first speaker?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm speaking today on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Virginia. The League supports HB 439. This bill would ensure that voters who vote absentee receive the information they need to decide whether or not to support a constitutional amendment or statewide referenda questions placed on the ballot. The League continues to believe that an educated electorate with nonpartisan information leads to trusted election results. The same information should be provided to voters whether they vote in person or whether they vote by mail. Thank you.
Okay, now we've got, was there another speaker, Allison Robbins, or did she, that Ms. Robbins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allison Robbins with the Voter Registrars Association. We support this bill, and we thank Delegate von Valkenburg for working on this issue. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
I just want to note that chiseled in the wall as we walk into this building, and there's a Thomas Jefferson quote that says, whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government, which this bill is exactly consistent with. So I'd move to report it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to report. All in favor of reporting will vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Okay. And Delegate Ranson, you're next. I believe your bill is similar. Do you have just 185, or is there another bill? You have another bill as well?
I've got House Bill 185 and I have House Bill 305.
Which would you like to take first?
Either. I can do House Bill 305 that is similar to Senator Vogel's bill that amends the code relating to the State Board of Elections.
Okay.
Her bill, I believe, adds 4 members. My bill would add 2 members.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make the motion that we conform her bill to my bill and report it as we passed it, and then we can work on this in conference.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of conforming to that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the bill is conformed. Is there a motion to report?
Move to report.
And sent to report and refer to finance?
My gosh.
Don't worry, Senator Howell's already heard this bill twice now, so it's in good hands. Okay, so the motion is to report and refer to finance. All in favor will vote aye.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
I'm assuming Senator Deeds likes my bill better, I guess.
No, he hates them both.
Okay.
Okay. Now your other bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have House Bill 185 that I'm bringing forward at the request of some of the registrars that are concerned about same-day registration. So House Bill 185 would repeal same-day registration that is set to go into effect on October 1st of this year. And I brought this forward because the registrars have expressed concern that as of today, and I did speak to the registrars today, they have not received any type of guidance and as to how they would actually implement this on the ground.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Dietz.
this bill is identical to 167, Senate Bill 167 from Senator Peake and Senate Bill 235 from Senator Chase, two bills that were introduced over here.
Mr. Chairman, I have no idea.
They actually are, it is identical, so we're not going to take public testimony. Is there any other question for the patron or a motion?
Report.
Second.
And what's that motion? Okay. So the motion before us is to PBI HB 185, and all in favor of PBI will vote aye on the electronic voting board.
Okay.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Well, 1 out of 2 is not bad, and we're happy to have you here.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Delegate Avoli. Okay, I think he left the room.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I think we told him that.
Mr. Chair, that bill is identical to one you've already heard, and I
Yeah,
was
from
against
Sen-
it, but I.
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't think it was identical. I think we
It's
had a different version. We need
It's
to
similar.
Make a motion that we
want
to
conform it.
Conform
Yeah,
it.
this is similar to Senator Hanger's bill that passed the Senate 39-1. So we can conform it, and if there are differences, they can hammer that out in conference if that's the will of the committee. So all in favor of conforming HB 902 to SB 283 as it passed the Senate, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Move to
All-
report.
Okay, all in favor of reporting will vote aye. Okay, next, we've got Delegate Bulova. Okay, we'll have him take him when he comes. So after Delegate Bulova, we've got Delegate Weber. This, is this HB 196?
I have two, Mr. Chairman.
Which would you like to
And
take
they should be
first?
fairly quick. They're fairly simple. 196 repeals the permanent absentee. I just personally feel that voters should be active in engaging in the ability to vote. It does not affect any other aspect of it.
I'll remind members, this is identical to Senator Chase's SB 234, so we're not going to take public testimony, but is there anything you'd like to say that might sway a vote or two here before we take our vote?
When I decided to submit the bill, I just felt that, we go to polling places, we go to early absentee, we go every, and plus as transitory as our society is, I just felt that it would be, it's more prudent to every election that somebody actively request an absentee ballot.
Okay, thank you.
I'm trying to move to PBI.
There's a motion, is there a second? Okay, so the motion was to PBI. All in favor of PBI will vote aye. Okay, and now you have HB 1090.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. While I feel that 1090 will probably meet the same fate, all it does is merely reinstate voter ID.
Okay, this is the photo ID, yes. Identical to SB 127 and SB 168.
Move to PBI.
There's been a motion and a second to PBI HB 1090. All in favor of PBI will vote aye.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay, thank you for coming to see us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, now we've got Delegate Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have House Bill 46.
This is another photo ID bill, I believe, or?
It is, but it's an omnibus bill that includes a number of other provisions.
Okay. It's identical to 3 bills that we've heard before. Did you want to briefly remind us what those provisions are?
Certainly. And Mr. Chairman, if I might, just a moment to explain a little bit about the bill and why I'm bringing it here. Many of you know that I taught history and government for 32 years. And I think that what we do when we get into the voting process is a fundamental civil privilege in a functioning democratic republic as ours is. Citizenship and its duties are central to who we are. Many of us speak to Boy Scout groups just as I've spoke to students over the course of many years. It's important what we do. It's central to who we are and our identity as a people. I would note parenthetically that I've probably registered more Democrats than almost everybody in this room. That is because I registered seniors, and so there were a lot of them. I probably per capita registered more Libertarians, seniors being what they are, and of course in the district I represent probably plenty of Republicans. But the provisions of the bill are these. It would require voters to show an acceptable photo ID, shorten the period for absentee voting from 45 to 21 days, although I note it would provide for longer hours in those days, depending on local choice. That would be permissive to localities. It would repeal the permanent absentee voter list, require that ballots be received by the close of poll on Election Day, and also require officers of election from each major political party to process absentee ballots and verify the cure process. About photo ID, there is wide public polling that shows that support for this crosses every demographic group, every partisan group. In addition, the 2005 bipartisan commission on federal election reform was chaired by President Jimmy Carter, former Secretary of State James Baker. Relevant to this is, and I quote, "The electoral system cannot inspire public confidence if no safeguards exist to deter or detect fraud or to confirm the identity of voters. Photo IDs currently are needed to board a plane, enter federal buildings, and cash a check. Voting is equally important," said President Carter, whose involvement in elections is very widely known. Many of you, certainly I this year, was there on the early days leading into voting. You saw the chart earlier. I won't go redundantly on that, but by far the largest number of voters showed up in the days leading up to the actual election day. It's a large expense to the registrars and challenge in not a small number of cases. In terms of receiving ballots by the close of polls on Election Day, 31 states currently require that. So we would be in keeping with the majority of our sister states on that. I'm going to just leave it at that, cut to the chase. And
thank you for the presentation and the reminder of what's in the bill. Okay, so this is House Bill 46. Similar, we've had similar bills in SB 127, 168, and 127, which were all PBI'd. There's a motion and a second to report. Substitute motion. Is there a second to that? And a second. So the vote will be whether or not to PBI this bill. Okay, thank you, Delegate Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ayes 906.
Okay, now Delegate Lethwich is here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's House Bill 1082. Start whenever you're ready. Okay. So this bill is pretty straightforward. I think everyone knows what it does and what its intent is. Essentially, it places discretion back in localities to determine whether or not they wish to hold their elections for council members, supervisors, mayor, and school board in May or November. Gives them that choice. Pretty straightforward. Probably not a lot more I can say about it.
Are there questions or comments from members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, statement.
Senator Spruill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the members, several local government, subcommittee chair of charter change. Some of us on this committee right now, there's 4 of us up here, are on local government as well. We have had 4 requests in local government to change from November back to May. Local government charter change. We turned those down. Mr. Chairman, I asked yesterday, we had almost 3 dozen of charter change from localities that will go from May to November that was approved. 3 dozen, I think that's 36. So now it's the same. So what happens is this, so we have heard this stuff before on, so I said, what's the difference between this time and what it was last time? Senator Stanley serves on local government. And I was telling him yesterday, so Stanley be here today to testify for this bill because he spoke about Danville and Martinville. And I said, and I checked with the folks in those areas, they did not talk about this bill this time. In Hampton Roads, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, because I checked with the council papers, Portsmouth, Suffolk, none of those talk about this time. Now let's talk about my city, which is his beloved city. On April the 14th, Chesapeake City Council has 8 Republicans at that time, 8 Republicans and 1 Democrat. On April the 14th, City Council member of Chesapeake tried to move the election, April the 14th of last year. Mr. Chairman, it failed. 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat turned it down. And I know I'm not telling the truth because the council members, Hammer, Best, DCK, Fadels, I think the last name, and Delegate Ward, they turned it down. Chesapeake City Council tried it then, April 14th. So this time, so I'm saying, well, what's the difference? And I checked with our city council, they didn't do with this. So my friend who's bringing it forward, there's no localities in Hampton Roads, there's no localities that I know of, I'm talking about this time now, who are asked for this bill. Like I say, since we turned it down 4 times in local government this year, and 36 people are already asked to go from May to November. Mr. Chairman, we can't turn back the clock. Give it a chance. I'm asking my friend to please give it a chance to work. It may not work, but give it a chance to work. But with that, Mr. Chairman, we heard it all before. I move that we PBI the bill.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second to that motion? So the vote will be on HB
1082.
1082, whether to PBI.
Mr. Chairman, you will have, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is a new bill to us. We did not hear from public testimony. Are there members of the public in favor of this bill who would like to speak? It looks like we've got Melanie Cornelise to speak.
I am not in favor of this bill. My question is, should a small number of people in power determine the group of their voters, or should voters have free and fair access to elections so that they are given the power to determine their leaders? House Bill 1082 by my delegate Leftwich is an attempt to overturn Senate Bill 1157, which was sponsored by Senator Spruill. This was a bill that was really citizen-led. It was started by my friend Gene Hanowich as Change the Date Chesapeake, when we all noticed that due to having our local elections in May, that only less than 15% of our registered voters were showing up to vote for in our local elections. So we started there, and for 3 years we petitioned until we got it to a point where it was called Change the Date Virginia. And due to the support of Senator Spruill, we were able to bring that bill to pass in the General Assembly as a law in order to protect access for voters and to promote greater participation in our elections, both local and otherwise. So please vote to pass this one by.
Thank you for testifying. We think your toddler in the background is cute there. Okay. Now, we're taking testimony in support. If Pamela Berg, if you're in support, why don't you unmute yourself?
I'm opposed.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Renee Turk, are you in support of this bill?
Yes, I am. My name is Renee Turk, and I'm the mayor for the city of Salem. The request is to support it because it's what's best for most of your localities, not just for the eastern part of the state. With all due respect, I know there are times that we promise others will support their initiative, and you've already done that. You did it last year, and you did with Senate Bill 147. Now, this bill's passed the House. It's a different bill than the other. You've fulfilled your promise, and we're asking you to represent your smaller localities that we mayors have reached out to you about asking you to support us. So respectfully, please vote for HB 1082 and vote not to support just one or two people or a party, but vote for your people. That's what we need. Thank you so much for your time and your hard work being there.
Thank you, Mayor. Now we have William Johnson speaking in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Paige Johnson. I'm the Commissioner of Revenue for the City of Fairfax. I am online asking you to support House Bill 1082 for the following three reasons. First, local issues will get lost in and among state and or national issues in November. Spring elections focus exclusively on local issues and local candidates, requiring all of us to come in November will push our local issues and candidates to the bottom of an already extended ballot. Second, I fear partisanship will increase where it currently does not exist. All elections have been nonpartisan in the city of Fairfax and the town before that since 1961. Nonpartisan nature of our elections has been the key to collegial atmosphere which has existed in our locality for decades. All candidates gather at the end of each election cycle to await results, affirm the winners, and express appreciation to all the candidates in the election. This is virtually unheard of today. Imagine an election day where everyone comes together to celebrate the results. That's what we do here in Fairfax. Lastly, elections will become much more costly and expensive for candidates to get their message across to voters. Incidentally, for those who fear this, we were the first jurisdiction in the entire South to receive a permanent waiver of pre-clearance from the United States Department of Justice pursuant to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We're very proud of this achievement as it demonstrates both fairness and inclusiveness in our elections.
Thank you.
The City Council supports this bill as well. Please allow us to decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Okay, now we have those speaking in opposition, starting with Jean Hanowich.
Hello, my name is Jean Hanowich, and I spoke in the Senate and the House of Delegates last year in support of Senator Sproul's bill, Senate Bill 1157. There was quite a few of us that spoke last year and again today, and it's the same story, the people versus local elected officials. And you see this coming around time and time again. The people in the localities, when they try to get the elections moved to November, their city councils fight it because it's easier for them to control who wins when there is low turnout. Fairfax is the exception. In our city in Chesapeake in May 2020, they patted themselves on the back for a 22% turnout. To me, that is horrible. And the reality is people from everywhere in our country vote in November. November is the time to vote, and this is about voter participation. And if you vote yes to this, you are going to decrease voter participation and take away the power from the people. I understand why these local officials don't want to have these in November because it's going to be harder for them, but they're supposed to work for that vote.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have about 49 seconds remaining for those in opposition. Let's start with Mr. Douglas Broom, or continue with Mr. Douglas Broom.
Okay, I oppose this bill. I would like to promote public participation as a member of the public in elections. And if I were to move to a place like Chesapeake, I would want to have election day on the day that's intuitive for me, which would be in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The League of Women Voters of Virginia opposes 1082 because voter turnout for local elections in May is lower than it is for November elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to PBI that's been seconded, and we've now heard from the public. So all those in favor of PBI vote aye. To PBI.
Ayes 7, no 6, 2 abstentions.
All right. Thank
Okay,
you, Chairman.
thank you for being here, Delegate. Okay. Next, Delegate LaRock, and if Delegate Bolavizade wants to tell him that he can come next, that would be great. Yeah, that's identical, so we can take that up whenever. Go ahead. You have
Thank
the
you,
floor.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, House Bill
956 simply seeks to allow only ballots, absentee ballots, postmarked before or on election day to be counted, unless, well, excuse me, with the exception of those that are delivered by noon the day following election day. The general intent of this is to take into consideration that under current election law, there are now thousands of ballots coming in late in the process. When that happens and they're being counted after Election Day, I think it can change the outcome of an election and perhaps undermine voter confidence that the ballots have been counted properly. In Loudoun County, there were 2,000 that came in after Election Day in 2021. We want all of those to be counted, so we would hope that people would be instructed by this to get their ballots in the mail earlier, perhaps, or come to the polls on Election Day or before. And that simply,
Mr. Chair,
that describes the bill.
But military voters might not be able to come to the polls or get to their ballots in the mail earlier. Isn't that true?
That's absolutely true, correct.
So, Mr. Chair, this change was made to provide military members more time to get their ballots in.
Honestly, I co-patroned the bill. I think it was Senator Reeves a couple years ago for that reason. And I think what has changed now that would change my position on that, and perhaps even some of the committees, is that things have changed dramatically, and the number of ballots that are being processed is absentee, and so the number coming in after Election Day would be significantly more. But I agree with the point that you're making, Senator.
Okay. Are there any other questions from members of the panel? Okay. If not, this is a bill that was identical to a bill that we heard before from Senator Chase that was PBI'd. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Okay, so the vote will be on whether or not to PBI HB 956.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for being a delegate. Okay, so Delegate Bulova's arrived, so let's hear from Delegate Bulova about HB 492, I believe is your bill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. House Bill 492 is a recommendation of the Joint Subcommittee on Campaign Finance Reform, where I had the privilege of being able to spend the summer with Senator Deeds and Senator Surivel as we did a deep dive for the first time in 30 years on kind of our campaign finance laws in Virginia. I know you all have seen a couple bills already come through this year as a result of the subcommittee's efforts, with most of them focusing in on how do we go ahead and strengthen the existing transparency and disclosure laws that we have in Virginia. And so House Bill 492 is specifically focused on making sure that our financial disclosure reports are something that the voters can go ahead and rely on. While we do have a disclosure process, and I know we all participate in that process, one of the weaknesses of that system is that there's no review for completeness or accuracy in that. So they're submitted to the Department of Elections, but it's primarily a binary question of did you submit it or did you not go ahead and submit it. And so as Ronald Reagan used to say, trust but verify, and in this case, it's all trust and no verify. And so that's what we're trying to get at with respect to this bill. It's got three different components, or I guess two main components. The first one is to set consistent expectations with regard to records retention by our treasurers. So any expenditure that is more than $500, you need to be able to hold on to those receipts for a particular period of time. And quite honestly, this is something that I think would be important no matter what, even without the rest of the bill, to provide some direction to our treasurers so that they consistently go ahead and hold on to those information. The second part of the bill is that it does set up a randomized process for reviewing our financial disclosure reports. So the idea isn't that everybody has to get reviewed every year. It's just that at some point you know that you could be reviewed, and it's a way to make sure that everybody is taking their responsibilities seriously. So the reviews for each cycle is 100% for statewide candidates, 10% for House and Senate, and then 1% for local. And in recognition that we've got a lot of smaller campaigns out there, there is an exemption for any campaign that raises $25,000 or less. There are a lot of other states that do this. North Carolina was a really good example that was brought to our attention, where they actually try to do a review of 100% of theirs. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a juxtaposition. But anyways, I guess to me, we rely a lot on those financial disclosure reports. And this is just an effort to make sure that the voters, as they're reviewing those reports, they're reviewing info from VPAP, which relies on those reports, that they can rely on their accuracy. And that's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the thorough explanation. Is there a question from any member of the panel? Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I said a couple questions about the mechanics of this, and I remember all our conversations about it. I'm glad you got a bill out about it. First of all, the way I'm reading it, does this say that they will only review reports after a general election is over for a candidate?
It's after, it would also include those who run in primaries and then fail.
Right. A further question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Surville.
Well, my point is we file, I know when you're in the House, you feel like you're kind of in perpetual campaign, but in the Senate, we only go once every 4 years, and so we probably file, I don't know, 6 reports in the 3 years before the election year begins. And so can those 6 reports not be looked at until after November for a senator, for example? The way it's written.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chairman, it is aimed at per cycle, if I'm reading it correct, and correct me if I'm not, and maybe council can go ahead and chime in, but all of them would be open for review, but I think the idea is that it's after your cycle is when you would be open to having these reviewed. And I'm seeing a head nod.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah, that's how I'd read it, is a bit ambiguous, but yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have a further question.
Senator Surville.
So if that's the way it works, then the way I'm reading this is that we wouldn't have for example, for the senator, we wouldn't see ourselves have to deal with a review until 2024. And given that this is going into effect mid-cycle, even for the House of Delegates and for local races, there's a lot of local candidates that are on 4 and even 8-year cycles. If you're talking about a clerk of court, it seems to me that what do you think about having language in here that says that no report shall be subject to this review that was filed before a certain date? Because this also, I think, contains some receipt and documentation requirements that people won't be on notice of until July 1 of this year. So it seems to me if we're going to be looking at reports from before people were on notice of it, that there might be an issue there.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would certainly accept that as a friendly amendment. I think it's implied that you're looking forward in terms of, because you do have a bill, you have, new record retention requirements that will come into effective July 1, but to the extent that you want to make sure that nobody takes this as reaching back into old information under the old rules, that's not the intent, and so I'd be happy to go ahead and entertain such an amendment.
I think what I'm hearing is from Senator Surville a suggestion for an enactment clause that says that no report filed prior to July 1st, 2022 shall be subject to the provisions of this act or something to that effect.
Exactly.
Brooks, is that, you can come up with something like that? Okay. So is there a motion? I take that as a motion.
I'd move that, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Okay. So there's been a motion and a second for the amendment. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay. So the bill is amended. On the bill as a whole, we haven't heard testimony. Are those in the room?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Senator Bell.
Couple quick questions for the patron. First question on the in the area in line 75, can those records be electronic, or do they? Because I don't see that it specifies, and it seems like if they're going to have to keep them for a period of time, electronic might be easier.
Mr. Chair, I'd say I think that the expectation is that vast majority of them would be electronic. Just because most of the transactions that my campaign treasurer has there's not a particular paper trail. And so I think you'd be holding on to those electronically in the vast majority of times.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, follow on?
Yes, Senator.
What are the penalties if the audit happens and they don't have the records?
So, Mr. Chair, we purposefully did not increase or add any particular new fines with respect to noncompliance, and so we would be relying, and I'm looking at counsel to see that he's nodding his head up and down, is that the Board of Elections would have the same authority as they normally would with respect to any violation of this particular section of the codes. We're not trying to pile on. And I think, quite honestly, it should be meant more as a learning tool, except for the most egregious situations. So, no new penalties. It would just use the board's existing discretion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there members of the public in the room who'd like to speak for this bill? Members of the public in the room who'd like to speak against the bill? On the internet, we've got to speak in support, Pamela Berg. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Virginia, we support HB 492. Ideally, the Department of Elections would have the resources to audit every campaign committee for each election. We recognize that Virginia currently does not have such resources, but the existing system, which provides no routine audits of campaign committees, gives voters no confidence that submitted reports are accurate. A review of a percentage of campaign committees with a necessary report will provide a strong incentive to each campaign committee to prepare accurate reports and give voters a greater assurance that their reports can be relied upon. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Greenaway.
Yes, thank you. My name is Karen Greenaway from American Promise, Virginia. We support this bill because it improves transparency for the citizens of Virginia, and it is taken directly from the recommendations of the Campaign Finance Subcommittee, bicameral subcommittee that sat this fall. And we support Delegate Bulova and thank him for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you. We've got 50 seconds left for Ms. Nancy Morgan to be followed by one more speaker.
Thank you, and thanks for Delegate Bulova for this bill. As we know, as he said, it came from a taxpayer-funded bicameral bipartisan joint subcommittee, and this committee acknowledged that the Department of Election currently doesn't have the ability to provide oversight of existing regulations, nor does it have the regulatory oversight capacity to undertake basic monitoring of campaign finance reports. So we really thank Delegate Bulova, and we feel that implementing the reforms in the bill contributes towards building a solid structure of campaign finance monitoring and enforcement, and establishes the foundation for comprehensive campaign finance reform.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Our last speaker will be Ms. Jessica Mott.
Hi, Jessica Mott, Arlington, Virginia. I think this, adding to what other people have said already, it would be helpful to campaigns by providing greater guidance and certainty on what's expected, as well as reliability for the public in the campaign finance information. And the sample size is cost effective, and the oversight is addresses a very important gap. So I urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if this bill has been requested by Finance, so if it's reported, the motion would be to report and refer. Is there a motion to take action on the bill?
I move we report and we refer to Finance.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor will signify by voting aye on the electronic voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Great. Thank you, Delegate
Very much,
Bulova.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Now, we have one more bill from Delegate Kilgore. That bill is identical to SB 370, which passed the Senate unanimously. I believe it's the same as your bill, Senator Bell, about risk limiting audits.
Mr. Chairman, the bill is identical. I talked with the patron, so it's exactly the same.
Okay, there's a motion to report. Is there a second? Okay, so all in favor of supporting HB 895 will signify by voting aye.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, and is that complete today's docket?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we will be having another meeting next week to deal with our remaining bills. about 9 bills. So thank you, members of the committee. The committee will rise.